When I first saw this little painted table, I honestly didn't care for it much. Layers of pastel paint, a mismatched knob, and years of being repurposed again and again. This was gifted to me, and I was told it was $15 at a local fundraiser event, so the money went for a good cause, I'm sure. It sat in the workshop for a while. The more I looked at it, the more I realized this isn't just a painted table. This is a survivor from a different era, a small piece of American craftsmanship that's been waiting quietly for someone to see it again. My name is Barry, and it's good to be with you again. Today I'm giving this forgotten table a second chance, and maybe rediscovering why the simplest pieces sometimes carry the deepest stories. Every once in a while, I come across a piece of furniture that feels more like a message than an object. This is just a small side table, maybe painted for a child's room or a nursery. You can almost imagine the hands that brushed on each color, trying to make something old feel new again. But beneath all of that is something far older and far more meaningful. Tables like this were built between the 1930s and 1950s, during a time when American furniture makers turned to simple, honest craftsmanship to bring a sense of warmth back into homes. Turned legs, a single drawer, and a bottom shelf. Nothing extravagant, just the essentials you need in a living room, a bedside, or a quiet hallway. I try to keep the temperature around 60 degrees Fahrenheit in the shop during the winter months here in Wisconsin. Thankfully, the paint remover is effective this time, and with a few different scrapers, the paint peels off in the most satisfying way. This is the moment when I begin to discover what beautiful wood species is hiding underneath. This time, I wasn't quite sure, so maybe you can identify it. As mentioned, this little table is essentially a vintage spool leg or turned leg side table, a style commonly seen from the 1930s through the 1950s, though versions were produced in the 1960s and later. Here are a few key identifiers. The turned legs. These legs are lathe turned with multiple beads and tapers, very typical of colonial revival furniture. Then there's the single apron drawer, a simple, functional form used on smaller parlor tables, telephone tables, or bedside tables. The lower stretcher shelf was a design feature common on 1930s to 1940s occasional tables. Finally, we see the overall shape, square top with a modest edge profile, very common in mass-produced, post-Depression era furniture. I thought by scraping the paint off the drawer front, I'd have a much better idea regarding the wood species, but I'm still puzzled. Every restoration project proves to be a little different. but the refinishing steps are often the same. I'm not concerned with removing all of the paint, just as much as possible with a scraper, coarse steel wool, and this afterwash product. At this point, I really didn't know what I was going to do with this old table, or how I was going to refinish it. With my last restoration project, a Lane Acclaimed cedar chest, I was aiming for near perfection with the restoration, or at least to the best of my own abilities. But while I was removing the paint from this old table, I realized so much of its character, its real honest character, started to reveal itself. There were dings and scratches hidden beneath layers of paint, random nail holes driven in with no indication of order, tiny imperfections that just didn't make sense at first, but somehow made this table feel more human, more lived in, and more true. That was the moment when I knew how I wished to refinish this, and also the moment I decided, I think I'll keep this one. I am going to sand this, but I'm also going to keep the exposed nail heads just the way they are, and even some of the old paint that's still clinging to the wood fibers. This decision has nothing to do with cutting corners, and nothing to do with being lazy. I'm choosing to keep them because they're part of this table's story, and more on that in a moment. Before I get back to the restoration, I want to share with you a tool that's become one of the most valuable additions to my workshop over the last few months. The Fanttik Nex S2 Pro Precision Electric Screwdriver. This little cordless screwdriver has 7 precise adjustable torque settings, so I always know exactly how much force I'm applying. Whether I'm removing the hardware from an antique hutch or hinges from a Lane Acclaimed chest, I can trust it to be gentle, controlled, and accurate. It also has a built-in shadowless LED ring light, which is perfect for those hard-to-see screws inside furniture. My favorite feature is the 90-degree attachment, and this is something I've needed for a long time. The battery life is incredible. I've been using this on every restoration project for the last few months, and I haven't even had to charge this yet. I also love how the magnetic bits are organized inside the case. If you're looking for something a bit more powerful, maybe consider trying the adjustable Fanttik S1 Apex. If you appreciate having a precise, well-built tool you can rely on, check out the link in the video description for Fantik's Black Friday deals. You can use code MCM S1 Apex to save a total of 41% off the S1 Apex, or use the code MCM S2 Pro for a total of 35% off the S2 Pro. I wanted to use these tools long enough to make sure I truly love them before partnering with Fanttik for this restoration. So thanks again to Fanttik for supporting my channel and for making a tool that genuinely makes my workflow easier. I'm sanding every part of this table with 150 grit sandpaper to give this a fresh start, but I'm also going to let this table show some of its true character, the marks of a life well lived, and the imperfections that will make it stand proud even today. Not perfect, but honest, and sometimes that's more beautiful than perfection ever could be. At this point, there's really no rhyme or reason as to what I do next, other than to just remove as much of the paint as possible with the tools that I have. These next few hours were actually nice. This work doesn't really require much focus, so I was able to play some music and give my mind a much needed rest. My best guess at this point is that at least the skirt on this table is made from solid oak, and the legs maybe a lighter Douglas fir. Time and again over the last 5 years, this Surfbreath 3x4 sander has helped cut down my sanding time significantly. The foam pads conform to the profiles and contours, letting me sand all these details without causing any damage. It's one of those tools that quietly earns its place among my favorite refinishing tools because it consistently delivers results that I can trust. This 100-year-old table was likely originally finished with an amber shellac, so I'm going to apply several coats of clear shellac, then wipe on an antique brown wax polish to bring all the colors together, and add an additional layer of protection. This has been a busy week. Episodes 149, 150, 151, and now 152 have been released, and there's still one more. So make sure you're subscribed and your notifications are on. Next week, I'll also be joining 10 to 15 other creators for a special collaboration and a friendly challenge. I can't wait to share my project with you. This was a simple project, but one of the most rewarding ones I've had in a while. I'm genuinely pleased with how it turned out. It's an honest piece with a rich history, and every character mark feels like a story preserved rather than a flaw removed. My name is Barry, and thanks for joining me. I appreciate all your love and support. Goodbye for now.